The Localize control is only ever used to localize your pages. That is, to automatically populate them with text for different languages. The Localize control is functionally identical to the literal control. The only reason a separate control exists is to emphasize that it is being used to localize the page. To begin this lesson, open the Forest Walks project from your Sample Files folder. And open dreamfalls.aspx in Source View. Now add a Localize control to the page just before the End ASP Content tag. Do this by simply dragging the Localize control from the Standard category of the toolbox onto the code. Now set the ID property of your new control to Localize Description. You'll now need to set the text property of the control to retrieve the Dream Falls resource from your Resources files. Set the text property using the following code. Text equals begin %tag $resources web resources, Dream Falls. This code tells the Localize control to retrieve the Dream Falls resource from the web resources file. Note that this will recognize both the webresources.resx file and the webresources.fr.resx file. You created these in Lesson 6.12. ASP.NET will automatically select the correct file for the page's language. Now let's test your code. View dreamfalls.aspx in your web browser. The value from webresources.resx is displayed, as the page is not using the French language. Note that if your computer is set to use the French language, you may see the French text immediately, as it will be your computer's default language. Now notice the flags in the top right corner of the page. When they are clicked, these buttons set a value in the session object. You'll use this value to set the language when the page loads. Close your web browser now and return to Visual Studio. Now open the code behind file of dreamfalls.aspx. And add the following new method to set the language of the page. Protected override void initialize culture. If session language equals null, page.ui culture equals en us, else if session language dot toString equals fr, page.ui culture equals fr-fr, else page.ui culture equals en us. Base.initialize culture The Initialize Culture method reads the page.UICulture property and applies the correct language to a page. The Initialize Culture event occurs before the page load event. Setting the culture in the page load event handler would be too late for it to affect the page. In this example, you override the Initialize Culture method, replacing the original Initialize Culture method with a method that changes the page.UICulture property. If this was all you did, your language settings would not be applied to the page. In order to apply the correct language to the page, the original, unaltered Initialize Culture method must run after your overridden version. To call the original method, you're calling the base.initializeCulture method at the end of your overridden method. This allows both methods to run sequentially. For more on the override keyword, see Lesson 4.13. Now let's test your code. View dreamfalls.aspx in your web browser. Now click the French flag in the top right corner. The French text is displayed on the page. Now click the American flag, and the English text is displayed once again. Close your web browser now, and close Visual Studio. You've now completed Lesson 6.13. Use the Localize control.